I'm curious what us as not as actors, what's something that we can do to engage, to help encourage the artist as citizen?
We are equal partners as we come together and collide. You have a key responsibility to that when you're occupying that seat, just as these actors and writers have a key responsibility to you. So it's the active engagement, I think, of to be up and forward in your seat, to be present, to acknowledge that you have a role in it too. That is vital. That's vital. It's not just coming at you, you're going to it, and it's the marriage of those two things coming together that are essential. And then go out and talk about it.
You all live in communities large and small. You all have relationships with your community schools or your gathering places. You should be advocates for making sure that the arts are in the K through 12 environment. This is a situation that has suffered horribly since the 1970s, not only in New York City, but around the United States. And the arts programs, in terms of their intensity and excellence, are spotty at very best. And I think many of us, I'm sure here, but around the United States, believe that the arts are an important and essential part of a K through 12 curriculum, that they allow children to grow creatively, that they allow these young children to explore areas that they could not explore in other ways. And it is the voice of parents and citizens within communities that make the difference, because everything in education in the United States is local.
It is very hard to quantify, the effect of theater, because you just have all these individuals, gathered in this space, and then they're all dispersed and they go off into, their little boxes in the sky if they live in New York, or they fly away and go to another space. And so you're just not very sure if your art is making the impact that you want it to. And so if there's one person who's affected, then maybe that's enough. Maybe, yeah, but you hope that, the people who have scattered and went into their little boxes into the sky are having little breakdowns in their mind that will allow them to go into their lives and look at people differently.
We live in this culture of the silent veteran. I know this firsthand, being a veteran and an artist myself. Well, a veteran, but I'm also an artist and an activist. And one of my primary missions in my life is to bring the arts and bring my love of the arts to my community, to the veterans, so that I can hear their voices and I can hear what they have to say, because that's the truth when it comes to the veteran. So the question is, how do we face that challenge of not only reaching to the audience, but including the audience and hearing their stories, pulling them into the conversation, into the discourse. And you never know, they could be artists in waiting themselves.
Exposure was a key thing for me. One thing that we try to do is attack it indirectly and actually not focus so much on picking military-themed material. Presenting characters that show the human struggles that aren't specifically military or civilian, and focusing a project on that, and not have civilians tell a military audience what it's like to be in the military. But having said that, that's not to say that if you're not in that community of people that you can't understand someone else's or have empathy for someone else's circumstances and write something or perform something that they don't resonate with, even though they have no history with it. But for me, exposure was a big thing, and that inspired me to do something with it.
Having a shared experience with them always has led to conversation, and it's not just at AITAF events. Like, I've gone to Exit 12 Dance Company, let's say. He's found a dance company started by a Marine. That sort of, their mission is sort of to bring the military experience to civilians, and just showing up. I guess that's what Jim said. Like going out and seeing what they're doing and being really supportive of that has been, I mean, that's how we've built our audience in New York City.
In 2007, I brought a theater program to northern Uganda to work with former abducted child soldiers there. And really the focus of our program was the 14 teenagers that we were working with to support them in sharing their voice with their community. But what I also found interesting was when we performed, which we did in their internally displaced persons camp, over 1,000 people showed up from their community to see these young people perform. And certainly the young people who were performing, you could see that they stood a little taller, they spoke a little louder, you could see the pride they had when their voices were landing on their community. But what interested me was also the reaction of the community and watching other children watch their peers up on stage. And you could almost feel that I could be that. That's something I could do someday. Much of the response that I got was, they're starving to death, and you're going to do theater with them. Don't they need food? And certainly I think it's what you said about, you know the value of it when you see it. After we came back with the film, people knew that value. But how would you recommend, or I don't know if you get these sort of comments or challenges in getting support for what you're doing, especially when there's so many budget cuts in the schools, fighting for the arts, and how do you address that and answer that?
I think it goes back to what I was saying just a little bit earlier, that the young artists that we have at Juilliard, and any dedicated artist, is absolutely and totally committed to his or her work. And I think through that commitment, through that determination, through that energy, what they're doing is communicating ideas and values that will break those barriers that you saw in Africa, and that would not necessarily be the situations that one would expect. I mean, as I said in my convocation speech, we can't provide food, we can't provide sanitation facilities, we can't provide medical care. What do artists provide? Well, actually, they provide our humanity. And I think in our world, too often, not just through tragedies and disasters, geopolitical disasters, but through our media, which is so quick, so intense, so superficial, to be quite honest, often, that we lose some of the very basic values that make us human beings. So all I think we can do is, for those of us who are involved in educating artists, or those of you who are artists, and those of you who consume art, is to make it an important part of what we are as a society, and not let it pass by. Because, look, I say that the last president that really supported the arts was Thomas Jefferson. And I'm not kidding too much. There is no politician that has taken any position, plus or minus, on the arts, because it's a political hot potato. How do we incentivize our politicians to say something positive about the arts is what our effort is. I don't think it's quixotic. I think it just takes time and determination.
The thing you said about those kids communing, in essence, with that broader community and empowering each other in that moment, I think really ultimately speaks to how anything moves within the arts, is that's a profound moment. And I think when we're lucky enough to share in one of those, and I think more often than not we do, although I would say probably 9 times out of 10 theater events I go to, I'm really suffering to get through it, you know. But I keep going. I keep going because that 1 time out of 10, something magical happens. And the value that comes back to me, and the sense of purpose, of home, of relevance as one individual is profound. And it's just understood, it's shared. And I think that's the ultimate goal, that you can make the difference. You actually can. And I think that's where the arts ultimately is optimistic and believes that believes in the humanity and the message that we have and the potential we have in sharing something together profound. You know, there's all kinds of reasons why we can't do it, you know, and why we can't move the ball forward. But, you know, I'm looking at our first-year students here who've come from all over the place, and against all odds are sitting in these chairs. And each of them has a story to tell about how they got there. And they're going to have a lot of stories to tell from this point on, too. Each of us in the room could speak to a moment where one individual, that teacher that person you collided with that has profoundly changed your life. And I think that's what Katori's going after. I think that's what Adam and Joanne and Joseph and myself and everyone who's involved in the arts is really trying to attack, is to believe in the possibility of something profound being shared, and then ultimately giving us a sense of why the hell we matter. It's like the huge Greek questions. What are we here to do? You know? That, to me, the only place I have found some sense of connection to that, which is, like trying to wrangle a cloud, is in the arts.
I mean, that's the only thing that's kept me to keep doing it. Like when I feel frustrated, it's like, I was getting the feedback from the audience, those little testimonials of, I was reading through some this morning actually, just to remind me, and these are a few that I was like, okay, this is why we do this. This was, I don't remember what show it was from, but it was just an email we received where somebody said, I suffered a brain injury from my 3 tours in Iraq, and I thought the comedy set was very funny, and wish best of luck in all future sets. Stay funny, stay alive. The set has given me a renewed vigor to continue to get better and heal. So that I was like, oh yeah, okay, I can keep doing this.